Welcome back to another episode of Forbidden Depths. I'm your host, Queen Frostbitten, and we're here today to get down, dirty, and sultry by staying open, educated, consensual, and safe. If you're returning, welcome back to another episode. Thanks for supporting the channel and its growth. If, of course, you're new here, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe, because one taste will never be enough. Awesome. Thanks, guys, for coming back to another episode of Forbidden Depths. Today we have an amazing guest, and I'm going to tell you, I'm super excited to have him because I've been following him for a while. And I'm going to tell you, if you don't follow him over on Twitter, you need to. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then I'll go ahead and introduce his links for him.
Hey guys, this is Shawn Alff. Do you want me to give a grander introduction?
Tell me all the goodies.
Everything. I'll keep it short. There's a lot. I'm a renaissance fan of porn. No, but I mostly I got into porn kind of doing script writing, so I write a lot of scripts. And I work behind the scenes for a lot of different directors, and then kind of snowballed and started doing some camera work, a little bit of photography, and then I do some nude modeling. And then this year I started performing. So I've pretty much done most of the jobs in porn except for an agent. I have not been an agent, but yeah, I've done PR, I've written for XBiz and AVN. So I've done a little bit of everything.
Nice. And those are some facts I did not know.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm learning every day.
It's okay. I wasn't expecting you to know my full bio.
Well, I try. And I mean, I can tell you, I've been looking at your spicy stuff for quite a while now. I got turned on to your content through Sophia. So
okay.
I started following her a while back, and then she actually did some collaborating with you, and she tagged you in something a while ago, and I was like, I'm gonna see what this guy's about. So I followed you, and I've just been looking over your content. I'm gonna tell you, I love it. I love, most recently, my favorite photo was the one of you holding this super gorgeous lady out, like you're standing, like you're at a cross, okay? Like the two of you are making a cross, and I'm an ass kind of lady. So that photo was like on point.
Yeah. That was funny because that was literally taken 2 days ago. I do a lot of art modeling, and that was with my roommate / my roommate's wife. So yeah, that was a hard post to do because she was hanging in front and just like keeping her steady and then balancing on 2 legs and then trying to find the light.
Oh my goodness. And that was one of the first things I noticed. So whenever I look at photos like that, I look at, let's see how much effort was put into taking this photo. And I'm going to tell you, your muscles were speaking to me. Looking at like your calves and just your back, the way you're structured, like holding her up, like you can tell there was a lot of effort into that. And that was one of the reasons I was just like, yeah, I love this photo. I love this photo.
Well, I appreciate that. I put a lot of time into my body, which is it's frustrating because there's some people who just naturally, like my roommate Robbie Echo, he doesn't lift weights as much, he does yoga and stuff, but he just has a naturally muscular body. And I have more of a skinny body, so I work out every day. And so just to get those baby muscles. Yeah, it's a funny thing. The art modeling thing I got into randomly at Burning Man. I didn't think anybody would ever want to take pictures of me, and I was with my girlfriend at the time who's a performer. And I kept introducing her to other photographers, and I met this woman, April, who's the same woman who shot those pictures. And she was like, well, I prefer to shoot men. And I was like, what? You'd want to shoot me sometime? And this is way before I did porn. I worked in porn, but I wasn't a performer yet. Right. And so it was a long, interesting journey with her. We've most of our stuff we do outside with like rocks and landscape, but
Hmm.
those are always adventures because you're trying to like get a shot while there may be people walking around, and so you're trying to like pop out as a
Hmm.
naked man and not get caught. It's always an
Hmm.
but you can get some pretty epic stuff.
I would agree. I would agree. Oh, so anybody that doesn't follow Sean over on Twitter, it's literally his name. You're going to look up Shawn Alff, and that's ALFF. And his Twitter feed is amazing. Not only like you get to see his amazingness, but whenever he does collaborations, he actually shares some like teasers of those. And oh, I was just looking through your feed, and one day ago you shared some stuff with Sophia Lake.
Oh yeah, that was I think the first thing on the new bed. I got the
Mm-hmm.
new bed, and we'd put up a ring light. It's one of these ring lights that's hitting me, but
Mm-hmm.
because originally we were gonna film like if I woke up in the middle of the night and she was still asleep, she was like, okay, film like molest me while I'm asleep. But the
Right.
problem was she woke up, and so we just started having sex, and then we were like, oh, we should probably film this. So we started filming it. But yeah, it's funny. We were talking earlier, like those random videos sell just as well as anything else. So I've
Yes.
been doing more just having the connection with somebody and just being like, put the
Right.
camera up.
Yeah,
So
and a lot of the audience is going to appreciate that rawness, that amateur kind of feel. I've
mhm.
noticed the time that I've been in, a lot of people really, really enjoy the amateur feel because it makes them feel like you're not just this person that is paid to say or do these things.
Right.
You're just doing it.
And I think so. I used to be a sex and love writer, and I was always interested in like reading books on human sexuality and the differences between female sexuality and male sexuality. And I think for a lot
Mhm.
of women, like women can be into really hard, rough sex, but I think part of them needs to know that the woman wants to be there, that she's
Yes,
consenting in a lot for most people. And
right.
so I think that's a big hang up with porn for a lot of women is they feel like the girl is just there for the paycheck, like she doesn't enjoy it, she doesn't want to be there. So I think
Yeah.
what we try to do with my scenes or even with Balesa, the company I work for a lot, is you show the beforehand and like the communication and the talking and the laughing and the humanity behind it, and then you can have as hard of a scene as you want.
Yes.
um
Yes.
so I think that's if if I do have a brand or if there's something I'm trying to do, it's that I'm trying to capture like the humanity
Mhm.
before or after the sex, and then the sex is whatever kind of sex we want to have.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's fucking beautiful. That's fucking beautiful.
well, I
Like
appreciate
I'm
it.
I'm glad, and that really shows the artistic side of you coming out because there are a lot of people that don't get to see that. That's like whenever I'm watching any kind of porn for myself, I really enjoy whenever they have little tidbits of aftercare to let you know,
Yeah,
hey, this isn't like some kind of production that we don't care about the needs of the people involved.
right.
And that
Yeah.
just gives you those tidbits, and I love that. I fucking love it.
Yeah, and I think too, if you're like, if you want really overproduced porn, like there's so much of that out there, but with like OnlyFans, what people are coming for is the stuff you're not seeing in those scenes, which is
Yes.
the aftercare. It is all those moments. So those are like when I'm editing a video, sometimes I'll put the camera down or we'll laugh. Or I think there was one scene with Ken and James where the tripod like falls over and we're just laughing. And I kept that in. I even put it in the trailer. It's like I just you're having like this intense sex scene, but then you like break and laugh for a moment. And that's just more real to me. And maybe there are
Yeah.
some people who don't want that, but I think if I'm building a brand, that's what I would want to build, like the kind of sex that I enjoy having. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And hopefully I'm attracting the people who like watching that. So
Right.
I can do more of it basically.
Yes. Yes, I love that. So that kind of leads me to my first official question for you. What provoked you to get into the community to begin with?
Um, this is such a so many ways I could answer this question. The simple question is the simple answer, I guess, is I've always done what makes for the best story.
Mhm.
So I had an undergraduate in English and then a master's in creative nonfiction, and I was a sex and love writer for this newspaper in Tampa called Creative Loafing for a while, but the paper industry was kind of dying. But
Yeah.
basically, I kind of realized the more I wrote about sex and the more I wrote about porn specifically, like the more not only I got more clicks on the stories, but when I was at parties talking about it, that's what people were really interested in, and that's what they really wanted to hear about.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's kind of a roundabout story, but I ended up in San Diego, and I would come up to LA like once or twice a month to write about sets. So I'd be on set and I'd be writing about or AVN or XBiz or Hustler. And at some point I realized like I could make so much more money just working on set than just writing about it. So that's kind of how I got into production. And I also kind of always I knew I could write better scripts than a lot of the people writing them. And
Mhm.
so that was kind of a goal too. So that's why I got linked up with Jackie St. James because she's more story driven. Um, so I made the leap up to LA and I started working behind the scenes full time. And then I never really thought I could be a performer. I have a very average dick and a very average sex drive. Um, but Balesa, this company I work for, and they're trying to be more female friendly. They
Mhm.
approached me about they wanted to do a series about a non-performer becoming a performer. Um, and I sent the owners these long email that was like telling them all the things like, hey, I have high anxiety, like
Mhm.
I just don't know that I'm gonna be that great of a performer. Like I only come like once every 3 or 4 days. And they're like, that's perfect. That's why we want you. And I was like, I thought about it and I was like, I if I'm thinking about my life in terms of a story, this is gonna make for the best story.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of took the leap. And I think it's like it's a risk versus the reward thing. And
Mhm.
everything that all of the memorable moments in my life come when I'm terrified.
Right.
And that was 100% true with porn and performing. I was scared and terrified, but it was also like some of the best moments of my life. But I'm still nervous. It doesn't go away, getting nervous before every single scene, which is
Mhm.
probably why I like to shoot with performers that I've worked with before and have some sort of connection with.
Right.
Um, because for me, the sex gets better the more that I know them and the
Oh,
more that we get.
yeah. That compatibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. So, whenever you were on this adventure to go from behind the scenes to performing, what strengths do you feel like you have that kind of allowed you to be able to do that?
Well, I'm really good at paperwork. No, you know what's funny in porn? If you are just competent at anything, people will just start handing you work. It's a weirdly very it's a strange world, but like that's how I get so much work behind the scenes just because I show up on time and I do a good job and I have like a
Mhm.
good attitude, and it's the exact same thing for performing.
Right.
Like as long as you're somebody who like the directors like and can tolerate and you're respectful and you do a good job. um but actually when it comes to performing like professional scenes, I really have only worked for Balesa, and I don't know that I would be a great regular performer in terms of like shooting studio stuff every single day because I just don't have that high
Right.
of a sex drive. But so like I'm building more of my OnlyFans and that. um but what's interesting with OnlyFans is so many women that have wanted to work with me, it's just because I'm safe and they know me and I'm not creep, and
Yeah.
they're not worried about me falling in love with them, and they're not. So it's I talk to so many women who like they meet this really hot guy who works in the industry or whatever, and then he starts talking, and then suddenly their pussy closes and they don't want to fuck him.
Yeah.
um so much of it is just I don't know, being able to connect with people and not being a creep, and
Mhm.
treating people with respect, and yeah, the things that you wouldn't think about, like when most guys think about getting into porn, they're like, well, I got a big dick, or like I'm
Mhm.
horny all the time and I want to fuck. And I'm like, yeah, those are great qualities to have, but that's like icing on the top of the cake.
Right.
Like there are plenty of guys. A great example would be somebody, well, I'm gonna say names, but there are male performers who are great performers, but they're assholes,
Mhm.
and people stop working with them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I've seen that several times myself, whether it's in a fetish or if we're talking like the nude industry,
Mhm.
all around, nobody wants to work with somebody that's negative or somebody that pushes people's limits or somebody that's
Right.
disrespectful. Like that makes a bad environment for everyone, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And if anybody who's listening to this who's thinking about getting into porn, especially women, um, there's a lot of like guys that are on the fringes of this industry who like have shot with big name peoples, and a lot of girls will scroll through their Twitter feed and be like, oh, he's shot with so and so, he's shot with so and so. So they assume that he's a good person, but a lot of times like
Yeah.
that guy will be more respectful for the high end girls, or maybe he wasn't that great, but he still has access to the content, so he's posting it. So
Yeah.
just please reach out to other people to see what their experience with this person was,
Yeah.
because
Research.
there's so many guys that are fringe guys that I don't know, they're just sketchy. But there's like, I know there's plenty of great guys that I recommend to my
Mhm.
female friends all the time. So there's good and bad. It's just there's a few sketchy characters that are on the peripheries of the industry that kind of give the industry a bad name.
Right. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people go more toward that just for the networking capabilities, just
Mm,
because they kind of want to be like, oh, well, this person knows a bunch of people, they have a large
right.
follow count, they're pretty big in the industry, and I just kind of want to use their name.
Yeah. And that does happen. And I think one of the problems with that, and this can happen with both men and women, is when you get a big following. As an example, like when our studio tells us to shoot a performer,
Hmm.
a lot of times it'll be because they have a huge following, but sometimes when they have a huge following, they don't like to show up to set on time. They
Yeah.
cancel constantly, and they're just a nightmare to deal with. But people have to tolerate it because they have such a big name,
Yeah.
and that can be true with guys who have kind of a big following, but they're like rougher than they need to be, or they push boundaries more than they need to be. But because of
Hmm.
they're who they are, people kind of let it slide.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you're somebody new that's getting in, you can say no. You can
Yes.
walk the fuck off that set. You do not have to be there. If somebody gets rough with you, if somebody does something like pushing your boundaries, maybe it's a soft limit, maybe it's a hard limit, you can say no. You can walk the fuck out. You don't have to do that. I've heard so many stories about people getting caught up in the moment and this person pushing boundaries because they thought in the middle of sex this person's not going to do something. Well,
Right.
respect yourself, love yourself, say no,
Yeah.
because you can go get a job somewhere else.
Yeah. And I would even say for the performers that are working on set, um, a lot of times they feel pressure that like if they're new, they want to say yes to everything
Yeah,
because they're worried the director will think they're a diva, which is actually not the case at all. I think there's a really respectful way to say no,
right,
which just saying, like, let's say they want to do a cream pie, but you don't want to do a cream pie. And like, oh, I don't really do cream pie, but we can do this or something.
right.
You
Yeah,
don't have to, it doesn't have to be a confrontational fight. But I think there's a really healthy way to say no, and no director is, as long as you're clear about your no's and you say them up front, and you're nice and respectful, no director is going to not want to work with you because you say no to something,
right.
you know?
Yes. And that all goes back to learning how to communicate. I mean, sometimes it's hard because people can communicate differently, but ultimately being able to voice that and communicate it's going to allow you to have better working relationships, so that maybe it's not just a one time you get to work with this director. Maybe you work with them over time, several times.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you need to learn how to communicate.
Yeah. And that's true for working relationships and regular relationships and
Yeah.
pretty much everything.
Very true. Very true. So that kind of leads me to my next question. So whenever you kind of started the transition to becoming a performer, how's that different for you? Like in comparison to working a 9 to 5 job?
Ooh. Well, it's way better. But the problem for me is I'm a workaholic, and
Yeah,
with performing and doing OnlyFans, I can work 24 hours a day. There's always work I could be doing. I have 30 videos that I could be editing right now. I have people I could be talking to on OnlyFans or Sex Panther. I run a few women's Sex Panther accounts. I could be talking to those guys. Um, I could be working on scripts. There's so many things I could be doing. So the hard part for me is saying no to work sometimes, and
right.
taking time for myself, and realizing like I don't constantly need to be working, but it's like running your own small business. Um, but I think there's also more satisfaction in that too, because you have a little more control, and a
Hmm.
little more power, and it's kind of more exciting when you make a video and people like it, and yeah, and of course, getting to have all these sexual experiences with all these great, beautiful people is amazing too, and getting to meet people like you, just posting stuff online. It's a weirdly cool um way to connect with people. I
Right.
think in the beginning, let me tell you this story, a real quick story. So
I'm here for it. I'm here for
Um,
it.
when I first started as a sex and love writer, I'd been in a relationship for 10 years. And as soon as I got out of that relationship, I started working as a bouncer at this bar. And I was also working as a sex and love writer. And the first girl I met who asked for my number, she asked like what I did other than work at the bar. And I told her, and she kind of freaked out a little bit. And she knew she was never going to call me. And I was kind of really sad. I was like, man, and that was just writing about sex. I was like, this is
Right.
really gonna like limit me. But then I realized I'm gonna scare away the people who I wouldn't want to be around, and I'm gonna attract my fellow freaks. And that's exactly what porn has done, is like it's scared away people I don't want to hang out with that are closed-minded
Hmm.
anyhow. And it's attracted all of these like open-minded freaks who I love, who are just like me.
Yeah.
So that has been one of the nicest things about performing and opening that door. And it's terrifying, but it's also liberating. It's like
It
that old
is.
saying, like freedom is on the other side of fear or something. Yes.
I love it. I love it. That's fucking beautiful. And that holds true to the majority of kind of anything that you invest in life, because I mean, you kind of find your crowd. Well, if you
Right.
allow yourself to grow, you find your crowd. And
Yeah.
let's look at my next question, since you're talking about freaks here.
Okay.
So my next question is, do you have any abnormal kinks? And what do you look for whenever you are scouting someone to collaborate with them?
Oh, well, those are two very different questions.
Yes,
But man,
spicy.
saying abnormal kinks, I feel like a lot of people would be mad about that. So my kinks are normal. Um, Well, yeah, I have a few. So I've learned actually through doing porn, my biggest turn on is being relaxed,
Hmm.
which I have this like, I don't want to say fetish, but like women wearing comfy clothes, like a hoodie and no pants.
Okay.
I used to think what it was watching PG-13 movies growing up. That's the way I showed girlfriend relationship, is that she
Okay.
was cozy. But because they couldn't show her being naked, and she'd be wearing one of his like long shirts. But really
Hmm.
for me, like when I'm asleep, I have like a boner the entire time because I'm completely relaxed. So
Right.
anything that puts me in a relaxed state, which is like knowing somebody well or having a connection or laughing, which is why I think joking is so much tied into my sexuality. Um, but my, I guess, spicier ones is this has a lot of reasons for it, and I feel like I have to justify it. I don't know why, but when I was growing up, my brother had this one porn video called "Interview with an Anal Queen," and it was with this woman J.R. Carrington, and I probably watched that. It was a VHS, which will tell you how old I am. I probably watched it like 100 times, and it was always Monday nights when my parents would go square dancing. I put on "Interview with an Anal Queen," um, and so anal kind of became my thing, and it was partially for a few reasons. It was a lot of that video because it hit during that critical imprinting phase when I'm like
Mm-hmm.
developing my sexuality. If you have enough orgasms watching anal sex, your brain's going to get wired to like, okay, this is what I like.
Yeah.
Um, but then also I grew up really Catholic, and so our youth group, they didn't really have an answer about if anal sex was sex, so we never asked them. So we're like, maybe that doesn't count as sex, so you could have anal sex.
Right.
And then the whole like, you don't have to worry about birth control. But then I think later on it became, I'm attracted to sexually empowered women. Like I
Mhm.
would like to say I like sluts. I don't like virginal women. I don't want to have to coax anybody to have sex with me. I
Right.
want who's like pouncing. And I think women who are into anal are generally a little more adventurous and a little more um I don't know, almost like sexually dirty, I guess.
Mhm.
That's at least what I think. So yeah, anal. I know it's a big explanation for why anal. I feel like I had another one. Oh, and that kind of ties into I like, I don't want to say like I don't want to be domed by a woman because
Right.
I tend to be slightly more dominant. But I think growing up, I, because I grew up Catholic, one of the only ways that I could conceive of having sex before marriage was like if I was forced to. So if like
Okay.
a woman cornered me and was like, "No, we have to have sex," and I'm like, "Okay, have to have sex." But and then I think early on when I first started dating women, I thought I like was only into aggressive women, but it turned out I was just too shy to go after women. So the only women that I was dating were the women who are approaching me.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I have a soft spot for like, which I think is probably why I tend to like MILFs more, um, because they tend to have a little higher sex drive and they're a little more horny. I think
Mhm.
I don't like watching like teen porn where the girl is like pretending to be reluctant. That's not my
Right.
jam at all.
Right.
So
Yeah.
those are my
You like
big
a woman
things.
that knows what she wants.
Exactly. Like I I was worked with Vanessa Vega a while ago, and one of the things I loved about her is like she'll tell you exactly how to make her come. And I wish more women were like that. I'm like, okay, move your hand here or do your this. And it's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Whereas there's some guys like the same dudes who like don't like to use vibrators during sex because they
Oh
think
my
it like
goodness.
impacts their masculinity or manlyhood that they
Yeah.
don't know how to get a woman off. I'm like, a vibrator to me is like a jetpack for your dick. It's like it makes your dick like Iron Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I don't know why you wouldn't want to team up with a fucking vibrator. It's crazy to me.
Oh my goodness. I have seen that so many times too. Like there are so many males that are intimidated by that. I mean, I think a lot of them don't understand that the majority of women are not going to come whenever they just have penetration. Like
Right.
it's scientifically proven. So,
Yeah.
like, learn to work with it, not be upset. I
Yeah.
mean, shit, I would. Like,
Yeah. It's a weird thing to be intimidated by, but I mean maybe it just shows a lack of emotional growth and maturity and I
mm-hmm.
don't know.
Yeah.
But for women, I feel like that is a huge red flag if there's a guy that like doesn't want to use a vibrator on you.
Yeah. Like tag team, bitch.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's actually like have shot like a lot of boy girl threesomes, um, which I love because it takes the pressure off of me. I'm like, well, if it takes me a second to get hard, there's another dude. But also, I'm more of a service sexual, so I get off getting another person off. Like
Hmm.
I was talking to somebody today, and I'm like, most of the time that I have sex, I don't come. Um, and they're like, that sounds like torture. I'm like, no, it's great because then I'm ready to fuck whenever they want to have sex. Whereas
Right.
it's like if I come, then I need more time to recover. But I feel like I was going somewhere with that. Anyways, like yeah, the boy girl threesomes, it's partially too because there's so many women who have that fantasy and they have nobody to fulfill it with. And I'm like,
Yes.
what? I could be, I may not have the biggest dick, but I can fuck you with my friend, and that will give
Hmm.
you an experience that you wouldn't normally have, if that
Right.
makes sense.
100%. Oh, and like, okay, so whenever I first got into looking at the industry, I noticed that it was a big misconception that you had to have this giant, enormous dick to be a
Yeah.
performer. Now, getting into the industry and kind of fumbling around, looking at, everybody across the board, the majority of people do not have these giant Titanic sized dicks. They have
Yeah.
more the average size. So
Right.
if you're a male performer and you're looking to get into it, don't be intimidated because you think your dick's a little smaller than the ones in the
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah. Realistically, one of the most working performers right now is Nathan Bronson, who has a very modest dick. Um, and the reason is directors enjoy having him on set.
Hmm.
He shows up on time. He does a good job. He has a great attitude. He's not creepy. Women like working with him.
Yeah.
And the main thing is he gets hard on command and he comes when he's supposed to come. He basically does the job, which is the hardest part is like there's these guys with these huge dicks who can't get hard. And it's like, well, it's your big dick is useless here. Like,
Yeah.
like directors would much rather have a guy who is not gonna delay their day.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also one of those things like most of these guys that want to be in the porn have never tried to get hard while people are watching and waiting for them in a situation where the girl may not really
Yeah.
be interested in them. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, yeah, it's
And
interesting.
that's, oh my goodness. So many years ago, before I got into any kind of sex work, I was looking online and I had seen a meme somewhere that said something about what it really looks like whenever you're on set at a porn shoot. And it
Mhm.
had this guy
A POV guy over the
straddling someone,
yeah,
like almost teabagging this guy's face, standing on him holding a camera. And I'm
yeah,
like, that's what it actually looks like. Not all this other crazy like performance kind of shit that you don't get to see behind the scenes. Like
yeah,
you're going to have somebody up in your business. You're going to have somebody like too close for comfort. And if you can't stay hard while they're too close for comfort, then you're not going to do good.
yeah,
Like it takes
yeah,
time to get used to it. Yes, but you have to understand that it's not just you fucking this really hot person.
right, yeah.
You're probably going to have a audience.
You're gonna have a big, and a lot of that audience like will be dudes like me who's like checking my phone or, or like yawning while I'm doing. Yeah, it's not what people think. Some of the best male performers, Isaiah Maxwell is a good example. He was an agent. And then like Lucas Frost, he was dating a female performer. And so he shot with her some OnlyFans stuff and then shot with more people. And then they were like, well, would you want to do this on set? So it was kind of like a slow getting into it and kind of
Right.
testing and seeing. But a lot of I saw something online recently which was great, which was like, if you want to get into the industry, the best way is to shoot with like a girlfriend and start an OnlyFans together. And
Right.
if you can't find a girl who wants to shoot with you on camera, that's your first problem. Like if you
Yeah.
can't do that one thing, then you're not going to be able to make it in this industry. So at least be charismatic enough to find somebody who wants to shoot content with you. Start from there.
Right. Yes, 100%. And so going back to that, A lot of people kind of sought you out because you're not a creep. You're easy to talk to. You make them super warm and fuzzy and they just feel compatible because I'm feeling it right now.
Aw.
So whenever you are searching for someone, what do you look for?
So I guess there's many ways I could answer that question. One of the answers is that as a guy, you don't really get as much of a choice. It's more who wants to work with you, and you're just kind of. But I would say when I don't really seek people out right now because shoot. I don't shoot more than like twice a week,
Hmm.
probably. Um, and so a lot of time it's people who've reached out to me that want to work with me, and that's like my biggest thing. I want to work with people who want to work with me.
Right.
Because it means they're more likely to show up, and I know in my head like something about them likes me.
Right.
Um, but I mean, mainly it's people who are mentally healthy is my
Hmm.
big one, who are emotionally stable. I really enjoy that. People who are really good at following through,
Hmm.
um, showing up, and people who are just nice. Like looks is part of it, but that is way down the list of things that I look for in a partner.
Right.
Um, and yeah, there, I guess, yeah, there's so many ways I could answer that question. But luckily for me, having worked behind the scenes for so many years, I do have rapport with so many women.
Hmm.
Um, so we kind of have like that basic connection, although that can work not in my favor too, because we've known each other for so long without having sex. Sometimes it can be weird then
Right.
have a sexual connection, if that makes sense. Um, because I remember I shot with one person, I won't say her name, but like we were pretty good friends, and so I was like, okay, this will be a good scene, and I just struggled really hard with that scene, and her energy, I could tell that she was annoyed, and I was just like, oh man, this is this is not it, and it soured the whole thing. So
Yeah.
it's weird because sometimes I'll think, here's somebody that I have a good friendship with, a good connection with, and there's like sexual energy there, and I think it'll be a great scene, and it's not. And then there'll be some people who like I don't know that well, and it's just kind of rolling the dice, and we have like great chemistry. I mean,
Hmm.
maybe it's just pheromones, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, mainly I would say professionalism. I guess if you had to boil it down to a word, like how we communicate
Hmm.
over Twitter and DMs, how professional you are in terms of like testing and just in terms of us talking about stuff. I don't really like to shoot with super, super new people because
Hmm.
I it's dangerous because a lot of times they're kind of testing the waters,
Yeah.
and maybe you'll shoot with them and then a week later they get back with their boyfriend and like, hey, can you not publish that video? And I'm like, well, I kind of put some time into it, and
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna publish it, but it's riskier. And so it's easier with
Yeah.
people who kind of have a track record,
Right.
and they're not in between relationships and just trying
Yeah.
this out.
And
Um
that's exhausting all on its own. Like
yeah,
if that is your work and you are going there to work, you can't be upset that this person is then using that. That's like I
right.
had an ex-boyfriend that kind of did that. So after me and him broke up, he went back to his ex, and then he's like, "Oh, by the way, that male female threesome that we did, can you just like not post that?" And I'm like, "No,
Yeah,
I can't because I've already spent a ton of time editing it. And literally the only reason you don't want me to post it is because you don't want her to see it. Well, she
right,
shouldn't be on my page anyway. So,
right.
but I mean,
Yeah,
and I make everybody sign a disclosure
yeah,
before I will do anything with anyone. I don't care if they're like my best friend. They are going to sign this form saying I have permission to use this content in those
yeah.
situations. because I'm really weird about
Yeah.
that. Like, I'm trying to be professional. I'm not trying to fuck you over, but I'm also making sure I have my security blanket.
Yeah,
So
100%. And
yeah,
I
I'm
mean, that
horrible
is
about that.
also one of the things that I look for is just when it comes to professionalism, like, do you want to do paperwork? Do you want to
Yeah,
do all of these things?
yeah. Because this is your life. This is your work. This isn't like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm doing this for fun. Like, because you not being able to use that content means you have to put something else in its place.
yeah,
And that can be exhausting, finding someone else for work, setting aside the time. And if you've already started editing, I mean, look at it takes so much. There's so much behind the scenes stuff that it takes to be able to do that. And I guess most
right,
people don't do the work on their own, so they don't really understand,
right.
but some of us do.
Yeah, yeah, I do. So, yeah.
So, kind of tying into the situation we were talking about earlier with the whole creep situation, some people don't work with
Mm.
performers because of that. So, have you ever been in a dangerous situation where you felt like some part of you was at risk, whether it be your mental health, your physical health, some part of you felt like you were just in a bad space?
Yeah, you know, I think as guys, um, I feel like women take on the bigger risk, which is why I think so many women, the first thing they look for is like, is this guy gonna make me feel safe and comfortable?
Right.
So when it comes to like dangerous, I haven't felt that, but there was one time I was shooting with a new performer that I didn't really know much about, and her energy was just so strange to me, and I couldn't tell if it was um like an emotional thing or if she was like if it was a drug thing or her energy was just so strange.
Hmm.
And she was in my house and I just wanted her to leave and she just kind of kept lingering around and I was just very nice and
Right.
but those are what scare me the most, I think, is with people who are emotionally or mentally unstable, which is why I don't like to shoot with those people. But
Right.
the scary thing is like if you haven't met the person, sometimes your first time meeting them is like they're coming to town to shoot, and
Yeah.
then you set up content and they kind of come over and you're like, and I mean a lot of times they seem pretty normal, but then there's just certain things you're like, oh, that's weird, and it's like an adding up of the weirdness. So,
Yeah.
but so yeah, my biggest fear, I guess, would be getting somebody like that pregnant, but I'm getting a vasectomy soon, so
Hmm.
I don't have to worry about that quite as
Right.
much. But just, I mean, yeah, I never want to make other people uncomfortable, but I also really worry about if somebody who's like that, who reads the situation wrong or like, goes on
Hmm.
and, I never want to be associated with anybody who has issues. So I don't know.
Right.
I guess again that's why I like working with established people because I kind of get an idea of how they are mentally and emotionally and if they're a stable person.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, kind of in that same field, let's look at the positives and the negatives. So, as a performer, what's the best part about your job?
um, I feel like my answer is going to be very broy. I mean, the reality is like so many guys watch porn because we like to fantasize about getting to have these crazy sexual experiences with all of these beautiful um women, and
Right.
I would say that's probably the best thing is, I mean, I could say it in more flowery language, which is that it's really cool to connect with in such an intimate way with, these people who you wouldn't otherwise have these experiences with. And what I think is interesting too is um have connections like after I shoot some content with people that I don't think either of us would have expected that we would have had that strong of a connection.
Right.
And so meeting people who are really outside of your the type of people you'd normally hang out with or be friends with. It really opens you up that way. And I think just it makes you it liberates you in so many ways, like this freedom and makes you so much more comfortable with yourself. Like uh, even though there's so much insecurity in like being naked in front of a camera and showing everybody this, there's also freedom behind that too, of just I remember this kind of ties into your earlier question, but when I started performing, I was kind of worried, like, well, everybody's going to see how big my dick is.
Mhm.
Um, but then after that, I realized the girl would hit me up for content, and like, I didn't have to worry about my size anymore. I'm like, well, she's seen my dick; it's online. She's
Right?
clearly comfortable with what
Right.
I have. So it was this weird moment of like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And more women ended up reaching out to me than they did before I was um on the internet naked. So that was kind of a boost. It was, yeah, it was a strange, unexpected thing that I being naked would make me feel more confident. Just because I'm like, well, it's all out there. So
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there's no imagining that has to be done. It is there.
mhm, right.
Yeah. So, in the same sense, what is the worst part about your job?
Um, hmm, the worst part, I guess it would be when you work a 9 to 5, and you have a shitty day. Um, it's kind of normal, but in porn, if you have kind of a shitty day on set, it can be something closer to like, I don't even know how to say it. Like, let's say you don't like working with your boss in a regular job. That's kind of normal. But
Right.
let's say you're shooting a scene with somebody that you don't get along with or you don't have great chemistry with, it feels way worse. Does that make sense? Like it feels
Yes.
dirtier because you have this kind of intimate
Right.
experience with somebody that you don't necessarily like. And I think
Right.
to especially as a paid performer, you'll get paired with people that you don't have a connection with or that you wouldn't otherwise
Yeah.
share that connection with. So I think that's probably the worst part.
Nice. Certainly. And I mean, that's like one of those buzzkill kind of moments whenever you're paired up with someone. And like, I've seen people stand in for other people too. So you show up and you think that you're supposed to be there with
Right.
this person, and then they don't show up for some reason. So they got to get a replacement.
Right.
So it's somebody completely different.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a little confusing and a little intimidating.
Right. And it's hard because it is a job, but it's a very unique job.
Hmm.
um and there's a lot of like, I don't even want to say gray area. There's people like that I would shoot with that I wouldn't necessarily want to hang out with, or who like,
Right.
as an example, like somebody who has polar opposite political views than you, or
Oh
like
yeah.
who thinks certain things that you just very much disagree with, who you would never sleep with in your personal life, but
Right.
you're doing it for the sake of the scene. But
Right.
there's also on the flip side of that, it's funny, there are people who like you hate their personality, but you have great sexual chemistry with,
Yeah.
which is, it can be very confusing.
Yeah. So, with your experience through sex work, I know you've been in several different aspects, so that's really awesome, and you can really give some insight for this next question. Did sex work teach you anything?
Ooh. Yes. I would think the biggest thing is just a general open-mindedness.
Hmm. Okay.
The reality that every woman is different, and the best way to make a woman come is to ask her what makes her
Yeah.
come. as I think like as guys growing up, there's the whole like, okay, when you eat a girl out, you
Stigma.
do the alphabet or whatever, or there's these certain tricks, but really the trick is just to like talk to your partner and communicate and figure out. And so there's that. I mean, even talking about consent,
Mhm.
um, like it's so normal to me now, like before you're having sex, just to be like, do you like this? What do you not like? I remember a big thing
Yeah.
was there's this huge divide between girls who like do not want fingers inside of them and women who love fingers inside of them.
Yeah.
But there's just certain things like that that I wouldn't have even thought
Right.
that,
Yeah.
and then there's a lot more women who like to be choked, but they don't want to be, they want just like their blood circulation cut off, but not their air, or, they like
Mhm.
to be slapped, but you have to be very careful about like how hard do you want to slap? Is it just with the wrist pop?
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing that porn has taught me when it comes to sex is just one, be open-minded and to ask and communicate and realize that everybody is different and everybody is different. And even um I mean, I think that comes to like not every woman is gonna like you or be your cup of tea, but there's going to be somebody for everybody, and I think
Right.
you'll find your little niches, and somebody might have a weird kink that you're not really into, but there's going to be people who are really into what you're into, and you can find that.
Yes, 100%. And how kind of you to lead us into our next question.
I'm so good. I'm like helping you.
I know,
All of
it's like
these
you read my
segues.
mind.
Yeah.
So, so my next question for you is, do you have any soft or hard limits for yourself?
um hmm. Well, it's funny because on every set, every person is like, if it's not an anal day, it's like, don't put anything in my butt, which is like the normal one. Like, unless that, okay, we're doing anal stuff today, like that's just always the big one. But for me, I don't like my lips or my tongue bitten. I don't know what it is. I just hate it. I hate
Okay.
getting my lips and tongue bitten. For me though, in general, with most women, I'm like, I don't have that many hard things, but I'll just communicate if there's something that you're doing that I don't like, and I haven't had
Right.
too many problems with that. Um, yeah, I think in general, it just for me, especially working with somebody new, I kind of just take it slow,
Hmm.
and I don't try to do like the crazy scenes.
Right.
Um, I won't do race play, especially like on OnlyFans or Sex Panther. If anybody wants me to like use racial slurs, I won't do that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm pretty, I don't know. Oh, I don't, I don't like to eat my own cum.
Okay.
Maybe one day I'll get into that, but that I haven't opened that door yet. And I guess like the other thing is like I'll do boy boy girl threesomes, but right now like I'm completely fine with our dicks touching and that. But in terms of like making out with a guy or like being penetrated by the guy,
Hmm.
I'm not there yet. Maybe one day.
Hmm. Okay.
But
Okay.
there's a funny scene of Dante, Cole, and we're like arm in arm while we're getting a double blowjob, but the arm in arm thing is behind the scenes. But it's such a like sweet, dirty moment because we're just like, hey, buddy. And meanwhile, she's like ski pulling us.
That'd be a nice shot. I haven't seen that one. That would be a nice
Yeah,
shot.
yeah. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. I, I like the idea of that. Okay, so I have two more questions for you. The
Okay.
first one is going to be about trauma. Have you at any point, whether it be in your early childhood, your teenage years, or your early adulthood, did you experience any kind of trauma?
So this is an interesting question for me. I read a lot of books on like evolutionary psychology and all of those things,
Hmm.
and um, I remember this one. It might have been Jared Diamond. but there's this tribe in Papua New Guinea, I think, that the younger boys, they kind of, they're subservient to the older guys, and
Mhm.
there's this idea that the more cum they ingest, the more quickly they'll become men, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. And they kind of, they follow this tribe and tried to see if this had any like psychological traumatic impact on them as adults,
Mhm.
and it didn't. And the reason was because it was kind of culturally acceptable. It was just
Yeah.
the kind of norm, and these younger guys actively were willing participants in this.
Right.
So I think about trauma. For me, I think I've probably experienced things that other people would consider trauma that wasn't traumatic for me.
Right.
Um, and also, I don't know. Yeah, I maybe I've also been fortunate enough. I've avoided some pretty traumatic situation. I think I'm pretty good at reading people and seeing red flags. So maybe
Mhm.
I've avoided relationships with people that could have become emotionally abusive, or
Right.
maybe I've exited before that's been a thing. Um, but I know that's like kind of the stereotype, is that to get into porn you have to have some emotional trauma, and we all have things. But I kind of always agree with Tony Robbins, who as cheesy as he may be, he's talking about his childhood and how his mom was kind of not a great mom.
Mhm.
But what he always says is like, if I want to blame my mom for how she was, I also have to thank her for making me who I am. So
Yeah.
I think about that in terms of any trauma that I've had, is I could blame it, but I also have to thank my trauma for
Yes.
making me who I am. Um,
100%.
so yeah, I don't know that I've had anything that I would classify as trauma. Um, yeah, I don't know if that's the sexy or interesting answer. I mean,
The honest answer. That's what we're here
yeah,
for. The honest answer. We're not looking for just sexy. We're
yeah,
looking for honest.
okay, well, yeah,
I
that's
also
my answer.
love that you're so in depth in psychology. I'm obsessed with psychology. So anybody that I see that is slightly interested, I'm like, let me pick your brain.
Yeah, 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 no, that stuff fascinates me. Yeah, I'm big into that, so we could have more conversations about that, I'm sure.
Okay, my very last question, because I've kept you for far too long. My last question for you is going to be, if you could talk to someone that is newly into the industry that doesn't know what they're doing, what kind of advice would you give them?
Oh man, I would have so much advice for them. So much advice for them. Where to start, man? It's such a broad question. So, um, as a
That's why you can
guy,
tailor it for yourself.
um, as a guy, some of the best advice that I heard from Mick Blue was to make it as a male performer is just to avoid drama, just to completely avoid
Mhm.
drama. And that, I know a lot of guys get in this industry and they start dating people and they do all these things, and then pretty soon they develop some sort of reputation. And so the biggest thing to make it in this industry as a guy is, well, be reliable, show
Right.
up on time, have a good attitude, don't be a diva, and just avoid drama. Like, you don't,
Yeah.
if you can have your thoughts and your anger, but you don't need to post those on Twitter. You
Right.
don't need to do that.
And that goes
Because
with any
again,
industry.
yeah,
Like it doesn't matter if you're in the fetish community, if you're some kind of performer at all, or even if you're into just BDSM, because nobody wants to see you shit posting all the time.
yeah, yeah. And I think when it comes to women, kind of similar advice, but a lot of women, the beginning is usually the busiest for them, where they'll be get shot by a lot of different companies.
Right.
What they don't realize is how small this industry is, and how much directors talk to each other, and how many of us work on multiple sets. Um, So as example, like, Jackie or Mike Quasar who I work for will be like, hey, have you ever worked with this person? And I'll be like, yeah, I worked with them. They're great. Or I worked with them. Don't hire them.
Yeah.
Um, so coming to set on time, like it's crazy. Just that, like coming to set on time, prepared, having read the call sheet and having a good attitude. And again, saying no is not having a bad attitude. Saying
Right.
no is completely fine, but just
Don't be an asshole.
don't be an asshole. Yeah, just be a nice person, be somebody who's easy to get along with, be somebody who like makes the day, because basically we hire people we want to hang out with because you're on set,
Right.
for 8 hours, 7 hours, whatever it is. So just people you can get along with who are easy to get along with. So your first like few months in the industry is what will make or break you. And that's why there's so many people who get in and then are out within 6 months. I would also say in general, there is this stereotype of women that I've noticed. If you never had a real job and you started webcamming because it was easy and you never wanted to leave the house and you just wanted to stay home and smoke weed and make some money, and then some guy was like, yeah, you should try webcamming, and then some agent hits you up and is like, hey, have you ever thought about porn? And then you're like, okay, sure. And it's not something you really want to do. You're just kind of like,
Yeah.
sure.
Right.
If your answer to why you're doing porn is like, yeah, it's easy, don't do porn because
Yeah.
you will get spit out so quickly.
And you will find it is not easy.
Yeah, yeah, because it's easy to make a few grand. It's easy to get, a few shoots, but what's hard is longevity. And what I will say is anybody can make it in this industry. You just have to find your niche. Like for me, working behind the scenes, I'm making more money doing that than necessarily performing right now, which is fine. And it's cool that I get to do both.
Right.
But also I do have anxiety. So I'm not the type of guy who's going to be able to shoot every single day. I
Right.
have a very normal dick, so I'm not going to shoot big dick scenes. I'm not as
Don't
in.
be letting him downplay himself, because you can go to Twitter and see just as well as I can that he is being very modest.
Yeah. But I don't know. I guess I have too much advice for people, but I don't know. Just basically be a good person and have a real job before you get, when I say real job, have a terrible job before you get into porn so you can
Yeah.
appreciate how great working in porn is. I've had many, many shitty jobs and I love working in porn, but I know so many people who have never had other jobs. And I know so many people who get into porn and then get out and then they try to do the real world or the other world and they realize, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
I loved working in porn and they took it for granted.
Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes
but
it's hard to come back depending on
yeah,
how you left.
yeah,
So you have to
exactly.
remember
Because you
that.
can burn bridges.
Yeah.
People don't want to work with you anymore. But also, just as good as it is as a job, treat it like a job too. Be
Yeah.
professional. I could go on and on.
Show up on time and be hydrated, damn it.
Be hydrated, especially if it's a squirt day.
Yeah. Yes.
Get your Pedialyte in.
All right. Well, I will let you get back to your night. Thank you so much. You
Of
guys
course. Yeah.
remember,
Thank you for having me.
go follow him. Get your ass on over. Follow him on Twitter. He conveniently has his links located in his bio too. Convenient for you. You don't have to do anything. Just go click it.
Yeah. Or you just go to ShawnAlff.com, which has all of my links. It's just my
Yeah.
link tray. So ShawnAlff.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Twitter is the same. Remember,
Yeah.
it's ShawnAlff. Okay. Go
Right.
find him
2
over there.
F's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks again for coming to support the next episode of Forbidden Depths, and you guys having a wonderful night. Hey, it's Queen Frostbitten again, your host. I just want to remind you that you can follow us on YouTube at Forbidden Depths. That's FORBIDDENDEPTHS. Or over on Twitter at the number 4 BIDDENDPODCAST. Remember to always stay educated, consensual, and safe. We'll see you on the next show.